Well, thank you guys for coming. This is an intro to canning and preservation class. I'm Sarah Graham and I will be your host today. So the biggest thing are the objectives. So what is canning? Pressure canning versus water bath canning, what you'll need to be successful at canning, canning safety, the benefits of home canning, which is why I do it, I absolutely love it, and other methods of food preservation, and so we're gonna go on and talk about that. So what is canning? Canning is the process of putting up, you've probably heard that term growing up, maybe like your grandparents or great-grandparents, they said, we're gonna put up, we're canning food. So it's a process of putting up, preserving food, and then, basically, there's two different types of canning. There is water bath canning, which is in this type of a pot. You can also use like a regular pot that is big enough to accommodate your jars, but the water has to be an inch over your jar. So if you're using like a little saucepan, like it won't work. So I will show you here. This is a water bath canning. Like this is actually like an approved water bath canning, container. But you don't have to buy this. You can get these for like 20, 25 bucks at Walmart. And so inside, you'll see that there is a rack right here, and you will open this up. And when you put your pints and your jars in here, your pints, your half pints, you'll then gently like lay this over. The water will be filled up so say you have a quart-sized jar, which is this size right here, and you have it sitting in here, the water will have to, this will be like the biggest jar that you'll have in this type of pot, and it has to cover the jar, otherwise you will not get a proper canning seal. So that is a water bath canner. A pressure canner, which freaks a lot of people out. We were talking about that before we started today. This is a pressure canner. There are many different types of pressure canners, and I will talk to you about those. Pressure canning you use for things that are low acid, meats, things like that, vegetables, carrots, things like that. And in here you'll see that it has this little tray which has to be in here. It helps so the glasses, the jars don't break when you're canning. The difference with pressure canning is, now every canner is different, so you're going to want to follow your canner's recommendations. But typically, when you are going to do a canner, you only put 2 quarts of water in here when you're going to can, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it does the job. So that is that. Okay. So, what is water bath canning? So you would use a large stock pot. Water bath canning is used for this method. A rack is placed on the bottom of the canner like I showed you, and so proper canning methods for water bath canning is you want to process to a boil, and you want to maintain that boil the entire time you are canning. If for some reason you have a glass top stove, which is what I have at my house, the heat gets hot and then it kind of goes off, and then it gets red and then it goes off. You want to make sure that you are maintaining a boil, and once you get it to a boil, you should be pretty good. But maintaining a boil is the only way to properly can in a water bath canner. So it's also really important that you understand what you are able to can in a water bath canner and what you are not able to can in a water bath canner. So pressure canning, like we were mentioning before, all different canners use different types of methods for canning. This is a dial gauge. So you can see it has a dial gauge. These types of canners should be tested annually by your local extension. So our local extension, which I believe is on that slide, yep, it is through Penn State University. That is a free service for all people that live in the state of Pennsylvania. You can email your local extension at that email address. It's bucksext@psu.edu, and you can schedule to have your canner tested yearly. It is a free service, and they normally will meet you. Like if you say like I'm in Bucks County, they will meet you somewhere to do that. It's a very quick process. And if you want more information on how to do that, you can just let me know, and I will talk to you about that. So that is a dial gauge. The next is a weighted gauge. I don't have an example of that because I do not have a weighted gauge canner. I'm sorry. So weighted gauge uses weights to measure pressure. The weight is specified for the recipe. So if you're going to can carrots, it'll be like use this gauge on your canner for that canning method. And no annual testing is required, which is nice. I mean, you don't have to test it, which is really great. Dual gauge canners are what I'm going to recommend for everybody in this room. My next canner, this was actually passed down to me from my mom, and the other one that I have, which is the same brand, just bigger, was also passed down to me. So the next canner that I buy is going to be an All-American. There is no testing. It is dual purpose, so it's weighted and dial, and is the safest canner on the market. They are a little bit more expensive, but if you actually are going to get into canning and you really want to do this as a lifestyle, then All-American is the way to go. So I have these little tidbit slides after each little section. So things to consider. This is really important. Every time you buy a canner, you're gonna have this little manual. This is like so important. I was talking before we started here, and even though I know exactly what to do when I can, like I'm gonna can some tomatoes. I know exactly what I'm doing, but I still open this up and I go through every single step in this book for like what you're gonna do when you're gonna start your canner, how you're gonna make sure everything is checked, you know, and you want to just follow like exactly like how much water you're gonna put in. I do that every single time, and it might seem really redundant, but you never know when you're like, you know, kids in the background, you're stressed out, you have anxiety that you're gonna miss one step and you're gonna either ruin all that work you did, or you know something's gonna happen with your canner, like you know you're burning something, you're gonna have glass breaking on the side. So just never throw this away, and if you ever need a replacement, you can just buy these online, just the manuals itself, because they're really, really important. Something else to take in consideration is that you should only follow proven methods by the USDA. Now, I am one to always feel that like you should use your own brain and come up with your own ideas, but when it comes to canning and the safety of your family, you need to follow proven recipes. You do not want to be going onto Pinterest and you know looking up how to make, I don't even know, like some type of chutney and then just following a Pinterest recipe. If it is not on the extension website, if it is not in one of these books that are down here, which I'm going to show you right now, you really shouldn't do it because these are proven recipes. A lot of people in other countries, they can milk, they can dairy products, they do all kinds in Canada, I actually follow somebody on social media that does meat in a water bath canner. And it's not proven. They do it for like 4 hours. Like they'll bring a water bath canner to a rolling boil for 4 hours and they'll can their meat. They haven't died yet. Doesn't mean you should do it, okay? You know what I mean? And you know, I was talking to my husband about it last night, and he's like, you know, they have different stomachs, and I truly believe that because they've been raised, you know, a certain way that their stomachs can handle something that maybe we can't handle. So it's just don't do things that are not, you know, safe. You know, the science does back the canning methods. They use laboratories to make sure these are all safe recipes. Books that I recommend. The book that some of you guys bought, or brought and bought, that is like the essential handbook. And I got that on purpose because it has everything you need to start safely canning. Other books that I recommend. This is the Ball Complete Book to Home Preserving, which you guys can check on your way out tonight. Another one, this is the USDA, the Complete Book of Home Canning. This is another one that's excellent. And then, I mean, I buy all the Ball book. If it's a Ball book, it's good. So just, if you see the word Ball on it, it's just buy it, it's good. So those are just some proven canning recipes. Another thing is you should never use cracked or chip canning jars. I have a lot of friends that I know personally that have been handed down jars from generation to generation. They've been handed down lids and bands from generation to generation. These are so rusty, like you don't even want to touch it. You don't want to use them. You want to use nice, clean, non-rusty canning lids, okay, and bands. These should not be reused, and I know that people do reuse them. I don't, but I do save them because the things that I do use these lids for are dehydrated products. As you can see in the front, I have orange slices and stuff like that. You can use lids that you used once to can on dehydrated products. It's great for storing. I mean, you're not using them to preserve anymore, you're just using them to keep the air out, so that's totally fine. These are different types of sizes. There are more sizes, but I just brought some today. Half pint, these are regular mouth. This is a pint regular mouth. This is a quart regular mouth, and this is a quart wide mouth. Different canning jars you can buy, and that's totally fine. There are also different types of canning lids. I also have these lids called Tatler lids, which are really good and they are reusable. So if you are looking into getting products that are reusable time and time again, Tatler is a really good brand, but they are very tricky. And I haven't been super successful at it yet, but I've only tried it like twice, and that was during the pandemic. So fall is just super easy, and I just know I'm used to it. But Tatler is a really good brand, and it's definitely an approved way to can. Oh, this is another one. You should never use like spaghetti jars or pickle jars that you buy from the store. You finish them up, you wash them. You really shouldn't use those to can. It's not approved. Other countries do it. Doesn't mean you should do it. So, show and tell canning essentials. I showed you some of this stuff already, but I'm going to go over just a couple of the tools really quick. So these are things that you should always have, and I'm going to link my Amazon store at the end, so if you guys want to like get anything, you can like see all these products. These are really important. This is how you would lift a jar that is boiling hot out of your canner, okay? So let's just say I'll do a demonstration. This is like 220 degrees. It's all done. You're gonna pull it out. It's gonna have the jar and the ring on it. You're gonna lift it out. You're not gonna shake it around. You're gonna have a nice towel down on your counter space, and you're gonna place it here. You're gonna place all the other ones with it, and then you're just gonna walk away for 24 hours. Okay? You do not wanna mess and move jars that you've just canned. Okay, first of all, they're hot. I mean, they are so hot. Like, you're not even gonna wanna touch them for a few hours, but it's really important not to disturb canning jars for 24 hours because you want them to have a proper seal. And if you do anything to move them, I mean, I'm talking like, even if you just go like this, you could disturb a canning jar. You don't want to do that. Growing up, my mom, and she, did her best with, the practices that she was taught, but she would, line them all up, and then she would put like a couple blankets over top of them, like big bath towels. And that's actually really not good either, because then you're like keeping the heat in and you're not letting it naturally come to a rest. So just line them up. It's okay if you want to set them on like a dish towel, but line them up and then just let them go for 24 hours. After 24 hours, you want to remove the band. So I'm just going to demonstrate so you guys can understand what I'm saying here. So you pulled it out of the canner. It's been sitting here for 24 hours. It's now 24 hours. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at the jar. You're going to want to see if the center is visible. If you can see, if you look at it eye level and you see like it raised, it didn't seal. That is, at that point, you should still eat it. You can put it in your refrigerator, you can enjoy it within a week or so, but that's not something you're gonna put on your shelf, okay? Then, after you check them, you're gonna remove the rings. You are not going to store, ever, never store your canning jars with the rings on, because that can give you a false seal too. Let's say you finished doing applesauce, okay? You just finished canning applesauce, and jars are all done. You have the bands on still, and you go put them on your shelf. So what happens if you actually have a false seal? You thought it was sealed, but it wasn't, and now you have this band on here that's keeping it closed. And you go to pull it, and you open it up, and it looks good, it smells good, but you could have botulism in there because you didn't actually know that there wasn't a seal. The seal is broken, but you didn't remove this, and so you didn't actually know that there wasn't a seal. Another thing that is very important, a lot of people do this, is they stack their jars. You should never stack your jars. You may only stack your jars if you have them like this. They're sealed, right? So you don't have the band on, you just have it like that. You put a piece of cardboard, and then you may put another jar. Okay, so cardboard, and you should only do that like too high. That's another thing that's really important, because again, if you have a bunch of them stacked on top of each other, this could be keeping this lid on, and it's sealed and there's no mold, but you have microorganisms that are growing in there. That's not safe. Now, I'm really specific about my canning, and so if some of you follow me on social media, you'll see that I have pH strips that I have, and I actually tested the rainwater recently because I was wondering about the Ohio train derailment, and I wanted to know if our water had been affected. As of right now, I haven't noticed anything, so just so you guys all know you're safe. But I have these pH strips because even though I know what I'm doing when it comes to canning, I get nervous. I mean, we in 2023 don't really feel like we know what we're doing, even if we do, because we've been taught and programmed to just rely on everybody else and rely on the stores and everything like that. So very simply, to make sure that you don't have botulism, you can take a pH strip and just dip it real quick for 1 second into your jar, and if the pH is proper, then you can totally eat it and you're fine. And I only do that on low acid foods, so if I have a beef stew that I'm pulling off the shelf, I do that. But you can also bring it to a boil for 15 minutes, and that is, acceptable as well. Okay, so we're gonna move past canning now, and we're gonna talk about food dehydrating. Now, I'm sure most of you in some area have dehydrated food, whether that is taking herbs that you got from your garden and just hung them to dry, if you put things in your oven, or if you actually own a dehydrator. Dehydrating is really awesome because if you're not really ready to kind of dive into the whole canning thing, dehydrating is a really safe method of preservation, and it's really, really easy too. So just some examples of things that I dehydrate so you can kind of get an idea of what you can dehydrate. My kids love apple chips. We go through these like all the time. Apple chips are really great. Another thing that is really good, and I actually do this in my oven instead of using my dehydrator, but we have our own chickens at our house. And so after the chickens lay their eggs and we use the eggs up, we crack the egg, we'll make our eggs and we'll put them in a bowl on our stove. And that bowl just gets filled up, and when that bowl is filled, I put it on a baking sheet and I put the eggs at 170 for 25 minutes. And I then use these eggshells after I smash them up in my garden. They're great for tomato plants. They're great to be fed back to your chickens as a calcium source. So this is just this is a wonderful way to kind of use everything. You get the eggs from your chickens, you use the eggs, and then you feed them their shells back, or you use it for gardening. It's pretty awesome. So I'm really into going to a low waste home, so that's something that is awesome. You go to the store and you buy oranges, and everybody wanted oranges this week, and then you buy the oranges and nobody eats the oranges, and you're like, come on, I just bought the oranges. And so what you can do, these are actually grapefruit fruit, but you can cut them up. You can put them without the peel onto your dehydrator strips, and you can dehydrate them. But you can also use the peel too. You don't need to throw anything out. God actually gave us pretty much everything we need to be sustainable, and we just don't use it anymore. So here's a grapefruit that was dehydrated, and then all the peels, I placed all the peels just randomly on the dehydrator strip, and then I dehydrated the peels, and then I mashed it up in a food processor, and this can be added to all kinds of desserts. It can be added as a vitamin C source for smoothies, and you have grapefruit powder. And you can do that with anything guys. Oranges. I know a lot of you here love the orange slices that I started introducing to Cork a couple years ago. And so oranges, it's something that I don't really use to make food with, but I love orange slices in my tea at night. And so you can cut up oranges, you can lay them all over your tray, you dehydrate them, and they are amazing, especially during cold and flu season. Add it to your iced tea, add it to your hot tea, it's wonderful. Yeah, just that's my mother-in-law does. She just makes hot water in the Keurig and then just adds an orange slice to it. It's exactly what she does too. It's great. So I'm really big into herbs and spices, so you can dry all your flowers. Chamomile is in this jar. I have some thyme in this jar. I just brought some things just so you guys can get an idea. This is bell peppers from September of 2020. I saw bell peppers on clearance, and I bought a ton of pounds of them, and I dehydrated them. And then also, you might be wondering, okay, so I bought all these, items, and I've dehydrated them, but what's their shelf? How long are they going to be okay for? So if you just put your item in a jar, it's good for probably 2 years. But if you buy these handy dandy little jar air sucker outers, you can put them on here without the band. Oh, so also dehydrated food, you can leave the bands on. That's totally fine. So obviously the band will be off here. I'm not going to be able to get this off as hard as I try. It's not going to come off. But so you put this on here, and I brought my food saver as an example. But they make these little things on Amazon now that are so much faster, like this big. You just hook it right in, and it goes, and it takes the air right out, and this is good for 30 years. Wow. 30 years. And also, you don't even need to add an oxygen absorber because you're literally taking the oxygen out. I always do things overkill. So for most of them, I feel like it's probably, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. No, it's deep in there, but I have a little O2 absorber in here, which you can buy on Amazon too. They have them by size, so these are kind of big. I wouldn't add these to jars, but I'll put an oxygen absorber in here, and then I'll do this thing with the air pulling out. Very technical, the air puller outer thing, and then it's good for 30 years. Now, you're not gonna, most people aren't storing glass jar in foods for 30 years, okay? But if you do, or if you're really into that type of preparation, which I know some of you are, if you are trying to actually, store food for 30 plus years, I suggest dehydrating your food, getting Mylar bags, putting the food in Mylar bags, adding the appropriate size oxygen absorber for the amount of food that you're using in the size bag you're using, taking the air out, and that's one way to have 30 plus year shelf life food that you literally bought on clearance at a farmer's market or at the grocery store, and now you have all this food reserved. So that is something to consider. Also, we all buy scalloped potatoes in boxes, and we open this box that we paid $1.50 for, $2 for. There's like this much potatoes in it and like a little packet of powder. You can just do it yourself. Buy potatoes, cut them, dehydrate them, and then make your own powder. It's super easy. It's super easy to do it. So that's just some stuff on dehydrating.
Now, when you do that, and you lift the seal off, are you able to then take the air out again?
Yep,
or once it's
totally.
Yeah.
Yep, do it right back. Yeah, it's really amazing. But like, we don't know this. Like, nobody taught me how to do this growing up. I bet you everybody sitting here, nobody taught you how to do this. Like, this is not the stuff that is taught in school, and it should be. So I'm like really passionate about it. So let's see here. Yeah, so dehydrating is the oldest and most used method of food preservation. There's almost all food can be safely dehydrated. Things that are high in fat, like avocados, you can't. Sorry, you're gonna have to freeze them, or you can freeze dry them, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, the dehydrator that I recommend, I didn't bring it because it was huge. I have an Excalibur dehydrator. Those are the brands I recommend. They're just quality. They're a little bit more expensive, but if you're gonna like actually do this for like your lifetime, you will only need to buy one. They're great. They're square. They're not round. They're square dehydrators. I wish I had a bigger one. I think I have a 5 tray. But I would get the biggest one that you can afford with what you have, what resources you have. And so that's that. Okay. Freeze drying is something that I'm relatively new to. I'm sure some of you may have heard about freeze drying. Freeze drying is a method, it's where you take the water out of a product after it's been frozen, and then it's placed under a vacuum, allowing the ice to change directly from solid to vapor without passing through a liquid phase. Freeze drying food is the method of preservation that so for example, I'll go back a minute. So if you can food, like let's say you can green beans. When you go to open those green beans, they're not like from the garden. I mean, there's been a change. We all know there's been a change. Even if you go to the store and you buy canned vegetables, it's not the same as if you were to pick it from your garden. With dehydrating, you get a little bit of closer to that as you rehydrate things, but it's still not the same. With freeze drying, it is the closest to nature that you can get. When you freeze dry, you preserve, I think it's upwards of 97% of the nutrients that were in your food originally. And once you have the rehydration, I mean, you don't have to rehydrate. You can just freeze dry something and then eat it normally. But if you do decide to rehydrate it, it tastes like, I mean, there's barely any change. So it's becoming really popular. It's actually so popular now that freeze dryers are at Home Depot. You can buy them at Tractor Supply. And even 2 years ago, you couldn't even, people didn't even know what they were. You had to buy them from Harvest Right directly. Harvest Right is still the only company that sells in-home freeze drying machines. So it's really, really neat. I don't have anything to show you because I don't own one right now. That's going to change soon, but I'm really excited about that. So something about freeze drying is, it is the best if you plan to put up food for really long-term storage. Now I have a couple people that I follow on YouTube that use freeze dryers for their rotating pantry. But these people are, have their own farms. They are using so much food. They're butchering their own animals. They are, they have, hundreds of chickens that they're freeze drying the eggs and things like that. So if you are looking to freeze dry, you can use that in a rotation pantry, but it's really good if you want to put food up for long-term storage. Freeze drying, like dehydrating, if you use the vacuum seal, does preserve food for upwards of 25 plus years. Freeze drying affords you the opportunity to safely preserve foods you get in bulk on big clearance sales. So if you were to go to Sam's Club and they had, let's say they had eggs on clearance because they were they were expiring soon, which is right now, like, this eggs are crazy, but like, let's say if in 6 months from now, there's an over surplus of eggs at Sam's and they're selling them for like super cheap, and you're like, man, I have a freeze dryer at home. You could buy, you know, like 400 eggs, and you could crack them and lay them all over your freeze dryer, and in 30 hours, you would have all those eggs preserved, raw. That's one thing that's really cool about freeze drying is you can freeze dry things that are raw. You can take hamburger meat or steaks or chicken, lay it right out on the tray, and in 30 hours you have food that is shelf stable that you can just place it right on your shelf and it wasn't ever cooked. You know, it was freeze dried. So that's something that is really, really interesting. Does anybody have any questions as of now?
Is there a book on how to freeze dry?
I don't know if there's an actual book, but I will look into that. But you can just Google freeze drying. There's so many things on the internet. There's a lot of people that have gotten freeze dryers that have like videos up on YouTube. That's a really good reference.
Here, sorry. After you take the oxygen out, how do you seal it?
Okay, so like for this part, okay. So let me just show you. So let's just say I just like dehydrated these potatoes. They are now dehydrated. I just filled this jar. I just placed this lid on. What I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna put this over top, like that. I don't have one of the really small little handheld devices. I have a giant food saver thing that I use, which is, you know, super archaic, but I'm just gonna show you anyway. So you hook one end to this. On my food saver, the other end will go into this thing called port. If you have a food saver, you most likely have a port on it somewhere. And these can be bought on Amazon or eBay. And you put it into the port, and I would plug this in, and I would hit the seal button, and it would be sucking the air out of here right now. Okay, you're never gonna have a band on here. It's just gonna be like, you know,
So you have the lid on.
just the lid.
Seal it.
Yeah, and then so it's gonna go off, and at that moment you would take this off, and it would be sealed. So this one wasn't sealed, clearly, like you can see, it just popped off. But so then you would have it sealed, and you would be like all set. I wonder if I have one that's like sealed that I can show you. It's okay. But like, yeah, so then it's like sealed. Like you literally would not be able to get this off. Like you would, like this was sealed. Like you would have to, like you could not get it off because of the airlock. And so to open it, you would have to use like, you know, they actually sell on eBay. They're like so overpriced, but they have these like canning removers that I have one at my house that you can put on like this and it lifts it up without damaging your lids. So if you do want to reuse your lids, you're not damaged. You're not damaging them. Karen, did you have a question? Okay, anybody else? Yeah.
Did you mention for botulism, pH level above which it indicates botulism?
Yeah, I believe it's 4.2. Don't quote me on that, but I think, I think it's above 4.2. So like when you do your food and you dip your pH strip, if it's above 4, I think it's 4.2. It's like it's not good. Like you don't want to eat it. So it was a user error when you canned it if you're getting that type of pH.
And for any of the kids, is there ever a nose test, like a smell?
See, unfortunately, okay, so for some, so like let's say, I'm trying to think of something, see, these are like all like really high acid foods, so it's not, you wouldn't get that smell. But like, let's just say that this is like green beans, okay? And you open it and you like get like this terrible smell. Like obviously that was like user error, it never sealed, like it's just, there was air getting into here, like we're beyond botulism, it's just bad at this point. But sometimes, unfortunately, botulism has no smell, there's no visual, it's like a secret killing agent, to be honest. So you just have to, that's why it's really important, and that's why I get really nervous when I see people on the internet like just doing canning, or they like, for example, my husband went quail hunting a couple weeks ago, and one of the people that he went quail hunting with, they had a bunch of quail eggs because there's a farmer that like raises the quail, and so he came home to his house and he did all this canning of these quail eggs. And he's like, he gave a couple jars to Matt, and they're fine because it's only been like a couple days, but he is like gonna put these on his shelf. And Matt was like, you know, Matt doesn't have too much canning knowledge, but he was like, how did you know, process these? And he's like, oh, well, I did a water bath, you know, like in a pot with water, and I boiled it. And Matt's like, you can't do that. And you know, he's like, yeah, you know, I always do this. And he's like, okay, like, no, it's not a good idea. But so like, you just have to know, because while it isn't really popular around here for people to die of botulism, it's because people aren't really canning. Like it's not like everybody that we know is canning. If everybody was canning and they were doing it wrong, we would have more statistics on it. But because canning is such a limited thing that it's kind of like a lost dying art, there isn't that many things because not many people are doing it. People that are doing it actually take it seriously. So, I mean, it's just something that you really have to understand. I mean, you should not be touching a canner until you thoroughly read your manual for your canner, and you look at, like, and I would start with something simple. Like, applesauce is a really great thing to make. So applesauce is something that the likelihood of you getting sick from making applesauce is like 0. I mean, like, it's a high acid food. It's just not gonna happen. And Renee actually knows, like, we did applesauce, like, she knows what it's like to do applesauce. It is a wonderful food method of preservation, and it's a perfect beginner thing to start. I would suggest doing applesauce if you ever do canning as your first thing, and I'm gonna offer a class on actually canning, and I'm gonna offer one that we do water bath canning and one that we do pressure canning. I think it's really interesting to do ground beef. Is also another really easy thing to, learn to do. And the great thing about canning meat is it doesn't look pretty, but it's shelf stable. So what happens if the power goes out for an extended period of time, and you have, right now I have 3 freezers in my house. Like, we have 2 chest freezers, and we have, actually 4. We have 2 chest freezers, and I have 2 stand-ups, like refrigerator freezer combos. And so if my power goes out, Matt's running out and like plugging in all these things for the generators, which we have, but it would be nice to be able to just be like, we're good, like we have all of our meat canned, and that's just not practical in today's world. Like, I'm always gonna have my freezer stocked, but it would also be nice that if we did happen to have, 3 weeks without power and we just lost everything, we still had protein on our shelves that was like safe to eat. So that's just something to think of from more of a preparation standpoint. And I'm gonna do some like plugs because I'm just gonna do some plugs. So if you guys are following me on social media, you can find me at Faith Homestead. This is something that Matt and I are really passionate about. A couple years ago, in 2019, I felt the call from the Lord to come home and to raise my kids on my own, and to really start kind of like living off the land and being more sustainable and to being more self-reliant. And since then it's progressed into like a whole thing. I didn't think Faith Homestead was gonna be a thing a couple years ago, but now it is. You can find us at www.faithhomestead.com. You can find us on YouTube at Faith Homestead, just by typing in the search. I did put a picture of what it looks like on the top right, so you can see like if you are on the right page. We have a podcast. It goes out every single week. It is the Faith Homestead podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts and on Podbean. And you can also find us on Instagram, TikTok. Don't hate me for the TikTok, and for Facebook, and on Facebook too. And it's at Faith Homestead. Unfortunately, someone had at Faith Homestead on Instagram, so it's _Faith Homestead _. And so if you guys could follow me, I would really appreciate that. It's great to have that support of people that are like-minded, who are interested in doing the same things that I am. I don't have a lot of family that is interested in this, so it's really nice to like talk to people at church and community that are into it. More shameless plugs. So you can also, if you're interested in anything that we talked about today, I'm an Amazon influencer. I have an Amazon storefront. You can click that link if you want to write it down, or I can send it to you at any time. I have in that, once you get to my storefront, you'll see like the Faith Homestead logo, and there'll be like, I have like a seed starting store, I have canning store. Like, basically what we do is Matt and I, every single week on Sunday, we release a podcast episode that is both on YouTube and it is audio, so you can either watch it or you can listen to it. And then we post, whatever we talk about in that episode, we then will post it to our Amazon store. So if we talk about like canning jars, we want our viewers to be able to like get those canning jars if they want, so that'll be in our Amazon storefront. And then last one, I am now an affiliate with Harvest Right. I don't have my freeze dryer yet, but I'm getting it. So if you guys are interested in freeze drying and you want to get one on your own, you can click that affiliate link, or I can send it to you and you can get a discount. I'm gonna be honest, if you buy a freeze dryer or if you buy something from my Amazon store, I will get a kickback. Like, this is just the truth. So I'm just letting you guys know. And so I'm really excited once I get my freeze dryer to then share all that with you guys, like bring in the food for you guys to try. I'm so excited about that. So that's pretty much it. Do you guys have any questions? I didn't spend a whole hour, I'm sorry about that. I went fast. I will go over a couple more things just because I have it here. So some things that we can every year because Matt is really into hot peppers. I don't know if anybody here likes hot peppers, but we grow probably 300 pepper plants in our garden every year. And so we're canning peppers. Like we actually sat down this weekend and like laid out our like garden like map for the year, which is really important. I really suggest if you are going to be a gardener that you have a plan of action, because it can get really confusing really quickly when you don't know where you're putting things. And I've been there, so it's really important to have like a blueprint. You're like, yes, have a blueprint. She would. Yeah. So like you can do peppers. Like peppers are great. You know, this is a pepper mix. It has carrots and onions in it. You can do jalapenos. These are just whole jalapenos, you know what I mean? Like just in the jar. Salsas. You can do Matt actually has requested pureed salsa this year. He really wants like the pureed salsa that you can just put on the chip. So this is more chunky, but I'm gonna be making pureed for him this year. So you can do all kinds of salsa. Tomatoes are really awesome too. And the best thing about canning for me is that you know what's going into your food. You know, it's really great to be able to kind of, you know, start your seeds and then grow your food and then harvest it and then can it and then feed your family. It's really just wonderful. It's like a cycle, and it's just like you know, it really gives you the you know, the motivation to like, you know, you have the skills to be able to do these things. This is like just tomato paste. This is spaghetti sauce, and you can like all these are approved canning recipes. You can add spices are something you have to be careful with. When you read a canning recipe that's approved, they'll let you know like you are able to add whatever spices you want, but you may only add like, let's say like a tablespoon per whatever. Like they'll give you like those recipe instructions, because it would be if you add too much, then you're going against like what their tested methods are. So they'll let you know like you can add like whatever spice, but only this much, so you don't mess up the, you know, the chemistry dynamics. Something else is water glassing, which I mentioned to you in the beginning. This is a method of food preservation that I am obsessed with. It normally looks a lot clearer than this, but on the way here we had a little bit of an issue. So water glassing is when you take eggs from your chicken coop. You need to have clean eggs. So if you train your chickens properly to not, you know, have dirt and, you know, poopy all over their eggs, you'll walk into you'll open your nesting box and you'll have eggs that are just like super fresh and super clean. You take those eggs and you mix them in a lime solution, which is right here. This is called pickling lime. You can also get it at Home Depot or Lowe's. It's called Builder's Lime. This is basically the more expensive, like prettier brand, because it's like, you know, good advertising. Like buy this brand. So, but it's 1 ounce of pickling lime to 1 quart of water. The water needs to be filtered. I have a Berkey, so I just use my Berkey water, but you could just buy like distilled water or spring water from the store. That's totally fine. And so you mix 1 ounce of pickling lime. You have to get a little scale, like a little food scale. It has to be like accurate, or you're not going to be following the preservation methods. And you just put your eggs point down. So your eggs, if you look at an egg, the egg has like a skinny point and then like the fat bottom. You want to put them point down. Do your best. I mean, some of them are going to roll. It's fine. And then they will be on the shelf stable for up to 2 years. For 2 years, you don't have to you're not doing anything to them, but literally picking them up out of your coop and putting them in the solution. That's all you're doing. When you go to use them, they don't make like really good, like over easy eggs. It's just like, that's something that you're not gonna get, but they make really good scrambled eggs, and I use them for all my baking. So like, basically we have, at my house, we have baking eggs, which are right there, baking and scrambled eggs, and then all my other eggs I use for over easy, because that's how Matt and I like them. So that's just another example of, you know, a type of food preservation.
And then you add those, like, do you do like the big mixture and then you just slowly add them?
So that's a great, So when I first did it, I was like, yeah, I'll need like 4 quarts, and I was like, this is not, like I overflowed it. Like I was like, this is not, I had to start all over again. So what I would do is just do 1 at a time. So do 1 ounce of pickling lime to 1 quart, put it in, add your eggs. The water will rise. Add 1 more quart, 1 ounce pickling lime, add your eggs. I have it pretty down to a science now, because like I do like to stir it up so it kind of evenly distributes. So I know for a fact that 1 gallon, a 1 gallon jar is 2 quarts of water, 2 ounces of pickling lime. So that is what I would use for that right there.
And you can take the eggs out when you need them.
Yeah, so
like,
basically,
you open them once and they're done.
yeah, so you just open it, take your eggs out, put it back on. You want to keep it in a cool, dark spot. So like yeah, it's amazing. The only thing is you cannot use store-bought eggs. Do not do it. And the reason is you just can't do it. And the reason is because when a chicken lays an egg, there is a protective layer on the outside of the egg called a bloom. And that's why you need to use clean eggs. If it's covered in mud or feces, unfortunately you have to then clean the egg and then put it in there, and by cleaning the egg, you're removing the feces and the mud, but also that protective layer. So you just want to use clean eggs that are not blemished from your chicken coop. And then, that's what preserves them.
So how did you get your chickens not to,
So yeah, no, it's a great question, and I did I'm a researcher, so before I got chickens, I'm talking 4 years of research, because I had to talk Matt into it. You wouldn't believe, if you knew Matt, where he's at now versus where we were, he was like, we're not getting chickens, we're not doing this, and now he's like, oh, let's get some more, And so he didn't want them, and so for a couple years I was like, I'll just research about it until you agree to get chickens. And so what I did was, when we got babies from the hatchery, and they were inside for a few weeks, and then we also were building our coop at the time. And when we built our chicken coop, we took plywood in 2x4s and we completely blocked off the nesting boxes. So when our chickens went into our coop, they could not go in. They had their coop and they had their roosting bars where they slept, but they were not allowed to go anywhere near the laying boxes, because number one, they weren't laying eggs yet. They weren't at the age where they would lay an egg, so they were just doing discovery. They don't need to go in there. So, and another thing is, when you first get chickens, you want to lock them in their coop. When they're able to go out to their chicken coop, you want to lock them in for 3 days. They're not allowed to go anywhere for 3 days. They're in that coop. This is the one time where you will allow them to have food and water. And then after that time, the food and water stays in your chicken run. You don't ever put food and water in your coop. And then at that time, the nesting boxes are still blocked. When you find your first egg, wherever you may find it, you at that point know that your chickens are at the age where they are able to lay eggs. At that point, you remove the wood, allow them to have the nesting boxes, and you get ceramic eggs, which you can find on Amazon. You place them in the nesting boxes. They see, okay, that's what happens there. And then you will never have an egg that is covered in poop or dirt, because they know that they go in there, they do their business, and they leave. I only get a dirty egg if I am complacent with adding pine shavings to my coop, and it's I just don't do it enough, and they bed down so much that they have this much bedding in their nesting boxes, and then they're it's my fault. So, but that's so rare, because I constantly I clean my coop 4 times a year, and so it's always good. Yeah, that's not really preserving, but kind of is. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry, in general, the name of the game, foods are acidic. You don't can acidic-based foods.
So you can can acidic and basic foods. Basic foods such as meat and beans, green beans and carrots, low acid vegetables, they must be pressure canned. You can can anything, mostly except for dairy. You can't can. If you're in a different country, they do it. You're not supposed to do it here, okay? But in the pressure canner, it's getting to a certain temperature and maintaining it that is killing anything that could ever be in that jar. You are losing nutrients though. When you pressure can, you lose more, because you are achieving a different type of preservation. With water bath canning, you are not getting to that high level of heat, so you're maintaining more of the nutrients, but you're not able to do that unless it is a high acid food. Applesauce is okay to be canned in a water bath canner. Your salsas that you're putting vinegar in and stuff like that. When you're adding citric acid, when you add things that raise the acidity level up, you're okay. So, did you have?
Yeah. So I have that one ball book.
Yeah.
But I haven't hardly canned anything.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the recipe calls for a ton of sugar.
Yes.
Can you use regular cane sugar, or does it have to be the dominant white sugar?
Okay, so what other sugar would you be wanting to use?
I would use organic cane sugar.
Oh yeah, that's
fine.
I don't know. I can't imagine it's not. It's just a better version of the white. So I'm gonna say with a 99% certainty that is totally fine. I don't really can a lot of sugary stuff. I don't really do too many jellies and jams and things like that. But I actually would think that would be better.
Yeah.
So I would just look into that. But I cannot imagine there's any difference. Because there's nothing added in white sugar that it's just more
just
processed.
Yeah.
So. Anybody else? Yeah, maybe.
I don't know if you said this already, but what's the ideal pH? I know you said anything above.
I
Like
think,
something, what's
so
the
it's
ideal?
different for different foods, but I believe anything, like, so you wanna be like 4 and under. Like, so I think it's like 4.3, don't hold me to it, like, look in your books that you guys got, or like Google it, I think it's 4.3 and under, is like, so under, like, so 3, 2, 1, like, that is like the better.
Okay.
Most foods, like, most foods that you can, it's gonna be like right at that 4.0 mark, yes.
So every time you open a can, you look at it.
That's a great, I'm actually gonna answer 2 questions, because you just reminded me of something. So the first one I'm gonna answer is that, like, let's say that you open this, these are jalapenos. You're gonna open this and you're gonna put them on tacos. You cannot cover this back up and just put it back on your shelf. It now has to go in the refrigerator, and it needs to be used within like a week to 10 days. Just so you know, like, I mean, that seems pretty self-explanatory, but you never know. So like, once you open a jar, it needs to go in the refrigerator, okay? Has to. As for the dehydrated, is that what you're asking for, the dehydrated, or was that the question?
Well, for like, because you said like, just to make sure you always test it with the pH.
Oh, yes,
So
absolutely.
you always, like every time you open a can, you put it.
Yeah, so, I mean, so I'll only do it once, because like, once I know, and then it's gonna go in the refrigerator, and I already know that it's safe. You don't even have to do that,
It's just like extra precaution.
yeah, I just like, I would never, to just be completely honest, I would never forgive myself if I like gave my family botulism and we ended up in the hospital, or my little kids got it and they died. Like, that's just, I'm just a crazy person with that. So I open it, I dip it, I look at it, and I'm like, good. Matt thinks I'm crazy because he knows that I know what I'm doing. And like, once you get really good at it, like, you're confident. Like, you know that like, you're adding the proper amounts of things when you're canning. But I just do it because I just have that little voice in my head saying, what if? What if you didn't do it right? You know what I mean? So that's just me and my craziness. But yeah, and you can buy those, you can buy like 300 of those strips for like $4 on Amazon. So why not? Like, it's not gonna hurt anything to dip it in real quick. So, yeah.
And so we've been fortunate in that we have the pressure canner, we pressure can all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But we've been fortunate in that if something doesn't seal well, usually you're gonna know.
You
Like,
know.
Before I put it away, I test the nipple that's on every lid.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually run my finger.
Yeah, you
over
can
the
feel it,
nipple.
so that's perfect. You will feel it. You'll feel it.
If it goes
It's
ding,
hard
ding.
to, it's a very little indent. And you can see it, if you raise it to your eye, like, you'll see it, the canning jar goes like this. It's like a little dip and you'll know.
And so if it's down, it's sealed.
Yeah, let me,
So
here,
if
let
you
me,
put your finger over the top of it and you can actually press it.
okay, I'm gonna pass this around. You can see, you'll be able to see that that's sealed. You'll know what I'm talking about when you look. It might be a little dust on it, sorry.
With our pressure canner, the fun part is when it's done cooking and we actually take the jars out and we put them on the drying rack, it's fun to hear them pop. 'cause
Yeah,
they're
and you'll
sealed.
hear that, it'll go ding,
Yeah.
like for like the next 24 hours, it'll be like ding, 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 like, yeah.
So we test all that.
Yeah.
But still, like, we've still had, like, over time, a couple jars every once in a while.
You may, yeah, you get some failed seals.
You get ahead and you go open it up and it's like, that is moldy as all get out.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, it happens. That's why it's really important to not stack unless you have that cardboard layer. To never do more than one cardboard layer, because like, you're literally just like keeping it closed, but it's not really closed. So people get in a lot of trouble with that. And another thing is just never keep the bands on, because a lot of people do that and it's like, just don't do that. But I,
One that's not sealed, so like the.
Oh, yeah,
so you can see the
potatoes.
The potatoes.
oh yeah, the potatoes, where are they? Oh, I have a label over top of them.
Oh, like just so you
Can
can
you
see the
press forward?
difference.
I have nothing that doesn't have a label over it that is.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is air sealed, so you can't even, sorry guys. But you'll be, there's a huge, wait, hold on, let me find, I have these.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, yeah, like, you can see, I'm like trying to find one that's like not been used 300 times, like, cause I use them for like all of my like, yeah, like this is pretty good. Like, you can just see, it's very subtle, but you can see that it's raised. Like, especially if you like kind of hold it out in front of you. So that means it's not sealed.
You feel it?
Yeah. it goes on.
You rub your finger over the top, you can feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the outdent.
Do you guys have any more questions? Yes.
This is gonna sound like.
No, it's not stupid.
So you can't like water bath something that doesn't have water in it, right? It's like, can you,
So like if you were just like put like green beans in a jar, like without anything,
well, say you wanted to like.
or like this.
so that- yeah.
No, it has to have like, there's like that, and whenever you make something, you'll follow the recipe and they'll tell you exactly what to add.
Okay.
And how much to add per, like, if you're doing a half pint, a pint, or a pour, like, everything is so, they make it really like spelled out for you. But yeah.
Yes.
Freeze dryer, did you
Yeah.
pull an inordinate amount of current, do you know?
So I don't know, Matt's a little bit concerned because we're getting one, he's like, oh, like, what's our electric bill gonna look like? I'm like, just chill, like,
When I
stay
got
chill.
the still current blew out my-
Yeah, I mean, so there's a big pump with it, so I imagine that it is gonna raise our electric bill, but I mean, I will get back to you in 6 months when I evaluate that.
But I did end up getting a Berkey.
Yeah.
That's really.
Yeah.
That's a water flow thing, right?
The Berkey, yeah, Berkey, B-E-R-K-E-Y, filter.com.
That's
When you
another-
go,
But oh boy, my wish list is long right now.
Yeah, I bought my Berkey like 4 years ago, and it is probably the #1 thing I've ever bought. That was like in like the $300 price range. Like I use it. I have not. I mean, like I just got replacement filters for it, and like I've had it for 3 years. Like it does get like a gallon, like 10,000 gallons I think is what it is per filter.
Just like
So.
doing chickens has been on my to-do list for
Same.
years, same with the good water.
Yeah, same. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm staying for John, so if you guys have any questions, I'll be here for the next like couple hours. So.